In this video, we're going to go over how to get better results using a directive prompting method where we can get more control over our AI images for print on demand. So in this video, we'll go over what it is, why we should do it, and the principles and how to actually do it ourselves. And we will use an example of a black Halloween cat because it's the right time to be uploading for Halloween. And we will go through different levels of directive prompting. So let's start with what directive prompting actually is. It's talking to the image generator in a directive way instead of simply giving it guidance. So what does that mean? It means you're giving it exact, detailed information in compute priority for targeting narrow outcomes. Now, when I say in order of compute priority, we have to think about how AI images are actually generated. They're essentially starting with static and noise, and then it interprets the words that we're using, and it takes that static and noise and slowly peels away the layers to reveal an image by ordering the different pixels. Now, you don't need to know how fundamentally that works, but essentially we have infinite possibilities, and the way that we get narrowed down into the right design is by making sure that we give it exactly what we want. So we narrow down the possibilities down into what we actually want to receive. And it kind of works that way with AI in general, but for image generation, you could think of it as like static on a TV, and then we're changing that static into an image that we want to actually see. And if you want to go to a certain channel, then we would be choosing different style references and different words that will give us exactly what we're looking for. So we have the what. Now let's talk about the why we should be using more directive prompting. And ultimately it boils down to more control. If we can control the outputs more than other people that are doing the same thing, then we can end up with better quality designs overall. If we are telling the AI exactly what we need. So we're going to waste less credits and less time. And then the other thing that helps is that we get more transparency into what worked and didn't work within the prompt. It's much easier to feed in this prompt to ChatGPT or Google AI Studio and ask for why something turned out a certain way. And then you can take that bit and you could ask it to shift it to be more in line with what you want. Okay, so let's go over some of the principles of directive prompting for image generation. And one of the most important core things that we are trying to do when we have directive prompting is that we want the most relevant context for the image generation early in the prompt. That means the main subject. If it's a cat, we're describing everything about the cat. And even before that, we might describe the style so that the image generation can pull away the bits of static and end up with a totally guided, cohesive design that is in the right style. If we give the style at the very end, it might have gone through and done all of the other stuff before we got to the style. Principle number 2 is that we're using natural language to tell the image generator what to do precisely, instead of having it make decisions for us. So that means we're not giving it options. We're not saying something vague. We're saying we are putting this phrase above here in this relative position over this design element. Now, this kind of directive prompting will end up with, generally speaking, more cohesive designs because we aren't leaving any of it up to chance. We give relative positioning, we give the exact font style, and every detail that is a must-have for the image. And you can even use something like negative prompting in order to avoid outcomes that you don't want. If we take away the ability to have textures and we take away the ability to have glowing effects or even gradients, we can end up with a much more clean vectorizable image if you want it to be done in vector. And if it is very important that you have a very specific outcome, you can include it more than once. Now, I wouldn't go too crazy with it, but using words that encompass the style that you want alongside words that say what you don't want will really help to control the results. So those are the basic principles. So let's go through a very extreme illustrative example. These aren't going to be the most polished designs. They're just here to prove a point. So an extreme example would be simply saying, make me an image of a Halloween cat. Now, the image generator doesn't know what style you're looking for. It just knows Halloween cat. It doesn't understand what color cat you want or any other colors in the image. We haven't given it any background elements. We haven't given it a background color. And we haven't given it anything that makes it so that it's organized in a way that will work well on a t-shirt. So ultimately, we're going to end up with a lack of control because we're leaving so many things open for interpretation for the image generator to make decisions. Now, the reason why it seems like you can get away with very short prompts in ChatGPT and some of the other good image generators is because there is a layer that sits in between you and the image generator, and it's essentially a little ChatGPT bot that will take your prompt and it will expand it or it will simplify it before it gets the image generator. And the reason I know this is because sometimes I will run images to the API for GPT Image 1, which is the name of the ChatGPT 4.0 image generator. And the information I was getting back was I was sending out an original prompt and it was modifying the prompt to be a very similar prompt, and it would keep all of the same ideas that I want and the requirements that I had to a certain extent anyway, and it would be a middle layer. And this middle layer makes it so that the 1 or 2 sentence prompts can sometimes get you okay results. But when we do a very large prompt with very detailed information of what we want, what happens is that it pulls all the necessary context for the image generation to be done well. So providing tons of context really helps to make sure that we have more control, even if it isn't taking our prompt exactly as it was originally. So if you feed it a 300-word prompt, then you will usually have it be modified down to about a 220-word prompt. But it will keep all of the same semantic meaning. And if you feed it something that's a 20-word prompt, most likely it's going to take it and beef it up to somewhere between 100 and 150 words. Anyway, here's the results from that very simple prompt. Neither of these would be very easy to put on a t-shirt. There's a lot of texturing over here. It's a very simple Halloween cat. There's nothing wrong with it, but it might not be the best idea to put this on a shirt. It's certainly not going to vectorize cleanly. And then over here, we have kind of a different type of uncontrolled image output. It's way too much on the realistic end. And that is how Google Imagen will default to doing things. It will be realistic unless we give it bounds. So you're probably wondering, how do we use directive prompting to fix this? So with this prompt, I went kind of a short, medium length prompt, and I actually just dictated it. I said, make me an image of a silhouetted black cat. We have a style here. We have the main character here. And then we gave further style information. We have a dark gray background. And then I started going into elements, and I talked about where I wanted them arranged and cute, spooky faces. And ultimately, I told it everything I wanted with relative positions. So instead of the previous results, we end up with these kinds of results. Now, that worked pretty well for ChatGPT, but Imagen took this and did not do quite as good of a job of following all of the prompts. So with Imagen, we would probably need to adjust the prompt a different way. So that worked. It was a significant upgrade. But what happens if we go absolutely wild and we expand it to this absolutely crazy amount of words? We end up with a much cleaner result. If we look here, we've got a smooth, solid silhouette with an upright posture. So it's doing all of that. It's got its tail in a certain position. We've got the cat's head turned slightly. We've got the dark, completely flat background that will be easy to remove. We've got placement of the moon in the background, which on a broomstick, angled upward. So it's angled upward. And we've got these pumpkins here with color and distinct, cute, spooky faces. It did a pretty decent job of that. And we've got star variations in size, but we have very consistent coloring throughout all of it. It's very vector friendly. And a lot of that has to do with what we have in the body of this prompt. Now, that's an extreme example of a much larger prompt than it is probably strictly necessary to do. But I thought that that would be a fun exercise to see how much control you can get. So if we look at these images a little more closely, here, let's move me a little bit, we can see that the overall composition is way better. And we've got a lot more control over the placements, and it's more appealingly laid out here. And then if you look at the Imagen one, I guess I could scoot out here. This left one is ChatGPT, and the right one is Imagen 4. And if you look at Imagen 4, we have a ton better control over the composition. It worked a lot better in this one than it did in this one. And that's just because we were very specific about the composition. And that's something that Imagen can really use sometimes, depending on what type of design you're trying to do. Okay, I know that that last one was probably wildly bigger than you've ever seen, and it is bigger than is strictly necessary. But it was there just to prove a point that we can use these long prompts to make sure that we give as much context to the AI and the AI image generator that's sitting behind it for certain models. It works with Google Imagen 4, it works with ChatGPT's 4o model, and it works with Flux Context Max. Anyway, I hope that those principles will help you to take better control over your own AI prompts. You don't have to take it that extreme, but it would be a good idea to start using some of these principles in order to control what images you are getting back from your favorite AI image generators. Now, I'm sure that you noticed that every time we added more words to the prompts, we ended up with more vector-friendly images. And that is because I want it to slot into my workflow where I go straight from ChatGPT or Google AI Studio into Vectorizer AI, and I punch out the background in one step. If you want to spend more time creating and less time processing, then I would check out how I do that in this video over here. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in that video.